Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Talent Series webinar on how AI is changing life sciences consulting and how you can be a part of it here at ZoomRx. So we will go ahead and give our attendees another minute or two to join us. In the meantime, I'll start off with some housekeeping. If you have questions, we will be taking questions at the end of our presentation today. And if you have any specific questions about recruitment process, interview process, application, positions, we recommend that you email us to recruitment@zoomrx.com. Again, that is recruitment@zoomrx.com. If you have any questions at all about what you will hear today based on how AI is changing life sciences consulting. If you have any questions specifically for our guest speakers today, we will take those in the question box. So in your screen, you should see an opportunity to add questions. So if you can familiarize yourself with that, you're more than welcome to input questions as our presentation is going. And at the end, we will take those questions. So we will go ahead and give another minute here. For those of you that are just jumping on, thank you so much for joining our Talent Series webinar on how AI is changing life sciences consulting and how you can be a part of it. So we're really excited to go ahead and get started. All right. So I will go ahead and get started with a quick overview of our agenda. So today we are going to be talking a little bit about ZoomRx. If you haven't been to a webinar before, if you have never heard about us at ZoomRx, I'll give you a quick overview of who we are and what we do as an organization. And then I will introduce to you one of my colleagues in the talent team who will talk a little bit about AI in life sciences consulting and what that promise looks like. Then we're going to dive into Sagan and Gallon. So today we have two guest speakers that I'm really excited for you to hear from. They are each product owner of each of our proprietary AI technology tools that we have built here at ZoomRx. So I'm excited for you guys to hear a little bit about that. Then we'll wrap up the presentation just briefly talking about careers in consulting. So if you are interested in making an impact in life sciences through AI, through consulting, we have some opportunities for you. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. And then we should have some time for questions and answers at the end. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started with a bit of an overview on who is ZoomRx. So here at ZoomRx, we are a market research and consulting firm specifically in life sciences. So all of our clients are going to be pharma, biotech, and nature. We do a little bit of work with med tech and med device, but overwhelmingly it is biopharma. And the focus of our work is primary market research and secondary data analytics. So what does that mean is we do projects across the full life cycle of drugs and products from very early stages all the way through post-launch commercialization. So in the early stages here, you're going to find projects like TPP assessments, BD target, KOL mapping. As the stages and phases progress, you'll see projects like segmentation work, forecasting, patient journey, concepting, messaging, launch planning. But as an organization, the majority of our work does sit post-launch commercial, meaning once a product or drug has launched or is ready to launch, we do a lot of work with brand tracking, promotional effectiveness tracking. We do work like attitude and usage, Salesforce effectiveness, drivers, barriers, competitive landscape assessment. It does lean heavier as an organization towards quantitative methodology, but we do qualitative work as well. So that's a little bit about what we do here at ZoomRx. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Shilpa. She's going to talk a little bit about the promise of AI in life sciences. So Shilpa, go ahead. Okay, I don't think Shilpa is audible, so I'll go ahead and cover this really quickly for her. So, as far as the promise of AI in life sciences, there's a couple of things that we've outlined here for you. And one of those is AI in life sciences consulting can help us with faster discoveries. Having better research, whether that's the collection of the research or how we process the research, it does help with also smarter healthcare. So AI is being utilized by healthcare professionals within the industry. It's helping us to create efficient systems as well as more personalized treatment for our patients. So there's a lot of different areas where AI is being used in life sciences. And being a consulting organization here at ZoomRx, we've kind of been able to build some proprietary technology that's going to help us with some of that like better market research and some better insights as well. So our first guest speaker is Gates Helms. He is actually our product manager for Sagan. He has more than 9 years in primary market research experience. He spans consumer, pharmaceutical, biotech products. He does have expertise in qualitative and quantitative analysis, as well as project management and client relationship building. Gates actually started with us in 2024 as an engagement manager and has recently actually joined the product team. So I'm excited for him to tell you a little bit about Sagan and how we're impacting life science consulting through AI. So Gates, if you want to go ahead, thank you so much.
Thanks, Janine. Hello, everyone. As Janine said, my name is Gates. I work in right now on our Sagan product. I was formerly a consultant engagement manager here at ZoomRx, and we move on to the next slide. I can take you through how Sagan came about. So Sagan was our answer to questions that we kept getting from clients of what is ZoomRx doing in market research leveraging AI. Right? We'd already began developing products, but realized we needed to bring something more cohesive to the table when exploring our vision. It also gave us time to reflect on how AI can reshape the way market research is done, which instilled us with a sense of wonder that we brought through every product development endeavor. So here's a quote from Carl Sagan that aptly describes how we feel about the way AI can enhance market research in the future. So some of our foundational beliefs and pillars upon which our AI strategy is built. Take you through them in just a moment. All right, so authentic voices, natural conversation, limitless scale, and instant answers. These are the kind of foundational pillars that we reflect on as we're building our products. Authentic voices, we have a proprietary panel of HCPs patients, and we believe amplifying natural, authentic voices through AI and not kind of leveraging synthetic data to supplement data sets is the way that market research will go in the future. Natural conversation, the capture of information in a more natural way. Currently, quant surveys are great for certain tasks, but they are limiting, and so we've found a way to kind of unbind the traditional capture methodology of kind of click and select to have more natural conversations with both HCPs and patients. In terms of limitless scale, this allows us to adapt this methodology in a way that you're no longer confounded by the same boundaries that you were in the past. So to answer certain quant questions, research questions that lended themselves well to quant, because you could get high n size, but we're missing that granularity and that depth of the whys behind some of the selections. Open ends can only go so far. Qualitative research, it's cumbersome to recruit and execute qualitative interviews. So now we have the ability to do kind of both at the same time or with a cohesive experience that leverages AI as the actual moderator themselves or takes answers further. And then instant answers is our vision for how clients can interact with their market research insights in a way where they can query what kind of research they've done in the past, test hypotheses, bring their own research, so that everything becomes more easy to access. You don't have to be a knowledge management wizard to understand what research you've done in the past and how evolving research questions can be addressed by historical insights. I can take you through a few use cases. So for natural conversation, one of our earliest features is dynamic dialogue text. So in a typical open-ended response, you would have, let's say, a doctor give a reason for prescribing product X, right? That could be as simple as, efficacy sounded good. We're able to use the AI to go further than that question. So prompt based on the context of what was said, what was asked in the question, what the respondent said, and dig deeper on the whys behind, simply efficacy. So what about efficacy? Was there a certain data point? We're able to do this both in text and now in voice as well. So you can have a mini conversation as like, help me understand the why behind the reason that you're giving. Limitless scale survey as a conversation is another thing that we're working on. So having the same kind of survey experience as you would with a quantitative questionnaire, but unbinding it from kind of click and select. So being able to work through as just a regular conversation for some of our traditional methodologies. We've already implemented this with great initial feedback in Patient Scribe. So that's our reimagining of patient chart audits, doing it exclusively with voice. You still get the aided lists, but you're able to take a methodology that personally was not very engaging. It's moving information from an EHR or a chart to a survey, often a quant survey online. And it's in a process that wasn't kind of natural for the healthcare practitioner. So instead of talking about a patient as they would in a consult, they would have to go through kind of a typical patient chart audit, and we're finding that we get much more rich insights when it's conversational in nature and unbound to just what specific piece of information we're asking for about a patient who, is not an accumulation of data points. They're a whole person and they have a history of treatment with this doctor that we'd like to explore. And then instant answers, I'll start with Message Labs. That's built on our foundation of millions of actual metrics collected from healthcare professionals that rate different messages on certain metrics that come together and help us understand how messages are perceived as effective in field. So imagine a rep led discussion. Afterwards, we have a survey. They're rated on how effective this particular message was across these key metrics. It helped us build a database where we can actually predict what a future message might do in field. So how would we expect this to be rated? How can this message be improved? I'll get into the specifics a little bit more, but it gives us an ability to, instead of just having 40 messages go into a message test, you can actually understand what the what messages should be winnowed out because they won't resonate among your target audience. And then second answers, again, it's a way of interacting with market research that's been done, testing hypotheses, bringing your own reports and reports you've done with ZoomRx and being able to query them in a way that feels more natural, that doesn't require someone who's very familiar with the past reporting to understand, like, has this question been asked and what is the current perspective on this? All right, a few snippets of how this actually looks. So I mentioned in traditional patient chart audits, we prescribe what information we want in the way that we want it, right? In Patient Scribe, you're able to ask for the same kind of information, so frequency and dosing, but the doctor is not limited to, enter this numerical amount of milligrams and, dosing schedule. It's much, you get richer information on the dosing schedule and how that'll evolve over time. Same with efficacy and safety profiles. The initial traditional PCA might get these as, a list of drivers, but here we have a much more robust response that we can use to understand the context of really why this HCP was interested. As you can imagine, this has great implications for launch products, where the kind of key initial drivers at launch are extremely important to understand and not just perceive from other data cuts that you might get from a purely quantitative evaluation. All right. And as I said, the initial feedback has been very positive. So we'll go through some of these stats on the left here, but just overall, some of our hypotheses were that this type of engagement would be more natural, less cumbersome. We've obviously worked through some of the finer points on the technical experience on the back end, making sure that the AI is confirming what questions have been, answered correctly and moving on in the right way. But even in our initial forays into Patient Scribe, we found that it's the same amount of referencing for the original chart. So it's not like this is taking more time to go through different screens. They're referring to the actual patient chart about the same amount as they would in a typical traditional patient chart audit. The vast majority of HCPs find it's engaging. I think this number will only go up as the experience is refined. As we take more and more feedback, we're constantly doing surveys to our panel to understand how the experience can be improved. And we have a team that's able to take that and integrate it into the product very quickly. And then just enjoyment, whether or not they'll come back and submit another Patient Scribe or participate, the vast majority, again, say that they've enjoyed Scribe and they're interested in doing it again in the future. We have some verbatims here, which I'll let you review at your leisure, but overall, it's very heartening to hear that this kind of process that, is new. There are some, technical skeptics or those who just want to speed through the survey. I think that's another heartening piece of feedback that we hear. There are the lower quality users that maybe want the survey to stay in the traditional method, and they're not necessarily providing the best context. So those are people that were okay to either keep traditional or lose from future patient chart audits. Right. This is the tie-in to Message Labs, the benchmark-powered optimization engine. So again, this predictive engine essentially is built on actual respondent ratings on different messages. And as you can see here, there are over 1 million real-world responses. There are 15,000 promotional messages rated. We've built in behavioral heuristics. So this helps us understand not just how the message is performing at a metric level, but how could you improve it? What are features of the message that we know can be improved through these different behaviorally science-bound heuristics? And then message themes and sub-themes, everything's tagged, so you're able to see kind of how is this performing among a subset of efficacy messages. And you can get into sub-themes as well, where base sizes allow. We service all the top pharmaceutical manufacturers, so our therapeutic coverage is pretty wide. It's greater than 24 and growing as new logos sign on every month. And so does it work? Like if we put in an actual message into this, how close are we to how respondents would actually do score? And the eval scores have been also very kind of confidence inspiring. We're able to see high accuracy prediction across all of these metrics. So this is the effectiveness, motivation, believability, and differentiation score, and all of them are 92 and up in terms of running a test with test messages for verification. So we're able to predict with high accuracy. Again, primary market research should be done for any new messages, but this is a great tool for teams, say early in a pipeline. Like we have the marketing team vying for 25 messages. We can only really give our reps 10 to work with, help us refine this before we even decide the final set that should go into market research and potentially into fields. It can also be used on the back end where there was like feedback or similar feedback across a few messages. It can be used to help the team understand which could be improved and which works more cohesively with other messages as well. We're getting into message combination modeling and understanding how to predict that as well, but that is in the works. So I won't mention that in detail because we don't have them yet. All right, and this is just an overview of HCP personas. So a framework of understanding very quickly when you're doing large-scale qualitative evaluations, how doctors can be segmented based on their perceptions about drivers and barriers for prescribing, what kind of clinical approach they take, how they feel about their engagement with clients, and with patients and how they work with others. So this is a framework for using AI to take your qualitative insights and quickly turn them around into personas. And with that, I think that rounds out the Sagan portion. I'll pass back to Yanine. Oh, I'm sorry. One more slide. Okay, where do we go in the future? I think I alluded to this, but currently we do a lot of trackers, ATUs and PETs, so performance effectiveness trackers. These are where the features kind of sit within those products that we have currently. So trackers and ATUs, the dynamic dialogue voice and AI qual complements those. Although I think more recently what we're seeing is AI qual can work across any of our features. So more recently we're doing follow-up HCP patient conversations with AI qual digital tracking. I won't get into details on that. It's its own fun product, but that can also be done as a supplement to have a follow-up, mini AI qual as part of it. And then we do a lot of rapid turnaround and qualitative projects where both message labs and AI qual can work. I think I've discussed all of these. HCP patient, just for those who are unaware, we actually have recordings of HCPs speaking to patients. So with consent on both ends, they're able to go and have a conversation and see what it's actually like in the doctor's office when a certain product or therapeutic area or even mechanism of action is being discussed. And with that, I'm sure that these are the last slides. So I'll pass back to Yanine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gates, for going through that and talking to us a little bit about Sagan. So now we are going to turn it over to Vijay. Vijay is our product manager for Gallant. So he joined us back in 2015, has been with us for quite a bit, more than 12 years of experience in market research and competitive intelligence. He's here at ZoomRx been across many different consulting and product management roles, and his expertise actually lies in bridging the gap between like frontline consulting and product innovation. So he channels his deep experience in client strategy and market analysis into helping us build the actual tools that he knows our consultants are going to need to win. So that is why he is our product manager for Gallant. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Vijay, if you want to give us a little bit of insight into Gallant.
Great. Thanks, Janet. Excited to get this on board. So before we get going, right? So Gates spoke in depth about what Sagan is. So in a nutshell, Sagan is our answer to how to revolutionize market research in terms of how we collect data. And Gallant is largely about how to revolutionize how we deliver projects based on the data that we collect using Sagan and any other traditional market research methodologies. So that's the online description of what Sagan is. So we are here to talk about the future of consulting project delivery as part of Gallant. At ZoomRx, we believe the most valuable asset that a consultant brings to the table is their strategic thinking, their ability to see the story in data and solve truly complex client problems and act as a true client partner and not get stuck in the weeds with respect to data analysis, right? But we also know that too much of a consultant's time is typically spent on repetitive manual work, also known as the grind. Our mission with Gallant is to primarily change that. This initiative is not really about replacing consultants with AI. It's about significantly amplifying what the consultants can offer to the clients, right? So we have built an AI-powered platform that handles a lot of the repetitive work for you so that the consultants can focus on what they were actually hired to do, which is think, apply their thought process, strategize, and solve real client problems. This comes down to three core principles. So the first thing is consultants are supposed to elevate client delight. What this means is the consultants are not really going to stop at just making sure that they are delivering error-free reports or like deliverables. The role is much, much beyond that. So moving beyond just checking for errors and standard data QC to be able to deliver significantly richer, deeper insights that can truly impress clients and make them go, wow. That is elevating client delight. The second pillar is surprise with speed, where you as consultants can deliver game-changing work at a velocity that nobody at the client side expects, right? That is going to really make them go wow again and want to make them partner with you again and again and again. And most important of all, the idea is to not just slog and put in a lot of hours, which is typically what consulting career is meant to do. While there will be instances where you'll do a lot of hard work, but the idea is to make sure that you are amplified significantly with the toolkit at your disposal so that you can also work smarter, not just harder. The idea is to scale your impact that you deliver on your projects, not just your hours. That is the core vision behind everything that we are planning to do as part of Gallon. Moving on. So Yanin, is the slide moving from your end? Okay. Cool. So now that vision that I set out to achieve as part of Gallon might sound really, really nice, but it might sound very utopian as well, right? But we can assure you that it was born from a very real place where like it's completely grounded in what we have encountered in the 15 years of ZoomRx. So we are like healthcare consulting company. We've been doing this for almost 15 years. And as Yanin was pointing out, I've been doing this for more than 10 years now as part of ZoomRx in terms of like delivering consulting projects for biopharma clients. And before we wrote a single line of code, what we did was we really looked inward in terms of like what are the key pain points that a consulting team has so that we can analyze them in depth. We identify the biggest challenges and biggest roadblocks in terms of like what is stopping us from doing the three things that we wanted to do in the previous slide. And I'm sure like for most of you who are in the consulting career or who are looking to switch to a consulting career, most of these will sound familiar to you. First, the reporting grind. We saw that brilliant people, brilliant consultants in our team were getting bogged down with a lot of manual QC efforts and endless slide formatting, where it was actually pulling them away from the things that matter, like focusing on the actual story and insights that really add value to clients. And then the second problem is the blank page problem, as we call it. So when you have a data set from, let's say, a 30-minute survey, and you look at that data set, you look at the raw data, like you might probably scratch your head to understand, like, okay, so what does it really mean to the 4 or 5 key business questions that I need to answer for my client? So how do I go about it? Where do I start? And that can take a long time when we start with a blank page problem for each project. We have also felt the pain of ad hoc analysis, where like as a typical consulting firm, we do not hesitate to partner with our clients like very closely in building our relationship, where for any ad hoc support that they need in terms of like quick slide pulls for their business reviews, for their quarterly business review, for their senior leadership meeting, they'll probably reach out to us because like we are the experts in that, right? What this also means that like in a cycle of reporting that we have, which is like pretty much fixed in terms of like what are the key deliverables that we need to deliver to the particular project client, these ad hoc requests can actually derail a lot of the project timelines if they're not being monitored properly and if like we don't engage with the clients properly. So those urgent last minute client requests, which can derail a lot of aspects of the project timelines with a lot of manual data pulls and slide updates and so on and so forth, that is also a significant pain, right? And finally, the risk of manual survey creation, right? You might, like, for those of you who have experience in primary market research, the survey instrument is the biggest, the survey instrument or the discussion guide for qualitative studies are the biggest and most important place where like the key business questions are going to be baked in, and that is going to determine how your eventual deliverable is going to look like. If we do not spend a lot of time thinking through and like having a very strategic viewpoint on how to design the survey, how to like design the discussion guide, it can go really, really long for the physicians who are going to take part in the survey, and as a consequence, we might actually lose out on a lot of important data, either because of respondent fatigue or because of just poor quality data, because the survey is just not structured correctly. At most of the firms, and there is another layer to it. One is the drafting of the survey, and the other is the programming of a survey into the platform. So ZoomRx has its own proprietary survey platform, which is being administered to our panel of physicians who take part in the survey in our own proprietary app again. But all of this was done manually. The survey drafting piece and the survey programming piece, making sure that the survey is ready to be fielded, and then fielding to the actual physicians. All of these were manual previously, and that is a slow and inconsistent process that might cause unnecessary errors and project risk because of loss of data and data fidelity issues. At most firms, these are just accepted as probably the cost of doing business. But at ZoomRx, we don't really accept that. We see these as problems to be solved, and we build solutions to eliminate these problems. Yanin, can you help me move to the previous slide? Or
Hi, Vijay. You are on the A Culture of Innovation slide.
I need to be on the Galen ecosystem slide. I don't know, my screen got frozen.
There you go.
Okay. Great, thanks. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the mission of Galen. We talked about the real problems that the consulting team faces today, and how do we fix all of these problems, right? So we give you superpowers on day one. That is called the Galen ecosystem. So this isn't a simple chatbot like a Swiggy customer support agent or something like that, right? It will not be a clunky piece of software. It's intended to be an integrated strategic partner at each stage of your project delivery. I'll quickly walk through some of your core tools. By no means this is the exhaustive list. We are building a lot of other agents as we speak, but these are some of the things that have gotten a head start over some of the other workflows that we are prioritizing. First, the automated reporting engine. This is going to be your agent inside PowerPoint. So some of you might have already heard about the Microsoft Copilot, which was intended to do wonders with respect to creation of slides, updation of data, and a lot of those things. We did a pretty heavy deep dive into what Copilot does, and it was barely scratching the surface. So the problem is that with Copilot, it's a typical generative AI engine that can create things out of thin air, but it is not going to be grounded on actual data that your surveys give you. It's not going to be based on actual data that is going to drive your insights and story to the clients, right? So what we have as part of the automated reporting engine is that's your agent inside PowerPoint, pretty similar to how the Copilot works, but it's a significant upgrade over what the Microsoft Copilot does. It automates data updates in your existing visualizations. It automates QC processes with respect to formatting, with respect to the data itself from the database, and it also makes sure that the formatting across entire decks is standardized. So there is a lot of automation in there. It uses a lot of micro tools that we built for each of these purposes. So you can literally just say, if you have a deck for some client that you've delivered in Q3, and if you want to update the data for Q4, all you need to do is just say update this deck with the latest wave data, and all the visualizations that you've updated for the Q3 data will be updated with the corresponding Q4 data as well from the survey, from the database. so that there is absolutely no loss in data. So, and you can focus on the narrative and not just the numbers alone. If you want to do additional exploration, and if you want to storyboard based on the baseline that you built from the previous wave of the report, that's when the next step comes in. So you can have an AI-assisted storyboarding agent, and that is your answer to the blank page problem that I explained in my previous slide. So it generates data-driven analysis plans and storyboard templates based on the historical research that we've done with respect to what are the business questions that we have answered to clients, what are the key business questions across different project types, across different stages of a product, like early stage brand, late stage brand, and so on. And that will help you jump straight into high-level strategic thinking without really going through the grind of just collating data from a lot of these questions individually and then assimilating them in a single Excel workbook before even looking at the story. Then the third thing you have is the Agile Storyboarding Analysis Platform. That is your story. That is your tool for getting instant insights. It is pretty similar to what I think Gates was talking about in the context of Sagan Answers, where you can answer those tough ad hoc client questions in an order of minutes and not really taking days to answer it without needing to loop in a separate data science team for that purpose. And finally, the intelligent survey creation platform that's currently being built. This agent drastically reduces project setup time and risk by using smart templates to design and test surveys with incredible speed and accuracy. And that is the toolkit that frees you from the grind of like manually drafting surveys aligned with your key business questions, and then verifying whether the drafted survey is programmed correctly, and then like doing a lot of those testing manually by taking like tens of like flows of the actual program survey, and then like figuring out whether the responses are coming in correctly or not. The intelligent survey creation platform takes care of most of these things so that you can do cursory reviews of the actual program survey and not really go through the entire grind by taking like 10 to 20 responses completely. So that's the Galen ecosystem in a nutshell. And the next slide talks about what you get from ZoomRx, right? Okay, I think the slide is a bit swapped here, but that's so Jan, can you go to the culture of innovation slide if that's okay? The order of slides seem to be swapped. I don't know if there is a version control here. Yeah, thanks. So having the right tools is one thing, but what makes ZoomRx truly different is our culture, right? So we are a consulting firm front and center, and that's explained in the 15 plus years of our existence. We have always been a consulting firm, but with a key difference. The difference is that we are a consulting firm that thinks and operates like a tech firm, like a startup, and we have never hesitant to evolve. And that means three things. First, your voice will shape our tools. So Galen is built with our consultants, not just for them. Your feedback, your ideas, they directly improve the platform and the workflows that you and your colleague use every day. You're not just a user, you are essentially a co-creator of the platform. Second, we are always getting better. We are constantly experimenting and pushing the boundaries of what is possible. So as you might have noticed, like the large language model space is evolving like big time each day, right? So for example, Gemini 3 released yesterday. So it is not just a general purpose large language model that is going to solve a lot of the specific consulting nuance problems, because that requires a lot of domain expertise and a lot of training on the data that is going to be absolutely critical for us to be able to answer very specific questions, nuanced questions for clients. So we are constantly experimenting and pushing the boundaries of what is possible. We are obsessed with finding a better way, which means that you will always be working at the cutting edge of the industry. We stay on top of what is happening outside with respect to the generative AI landscape, but also like we innovate a lot within so that like we can overcome like consulting specific problems significantly better than how a lot of these general purpose models are going to be able to do the same. And third, we invest in what works. We are very rigorous and data driven in our own approach. This means that you get extremely reliable, powerful tools that are proven to make your job better, more impactful, and at the end of the day, more enjoyable, so that you don't really have to worry about, like, am I getting the data points correct or not? Because that is going to be taken care of by Galen. What really matters is your thought and your application of what does those data points mean. And that is where you're going to be making true impact in terms of your client partnership. So in a nutshell, you're not just joining a consulting firm, you're joining an innovation ecosystem that also functions as a consulting firm. Now going to my final slide. So what does all this mean? The mission, the tools, the culture, what does this really mean for you and your career? It comes down to this powerful idea, right? At ZoomRx, you just don't build or accelerate your work experience, as you call it in a lot of firms. You accelerate your career and not just your hours or work experience. And this is how it's done, right? So first, from day one, you get to be a strategic advisor, not just a data wrangler. With the grind automated, you will spend a lot of your time on what actually matters. So making sure that you make sense of the data that is in front of you, understand your client's market context, understand your client strategy, make sure that you tell a very compelling story to your clients based on the data at your disposal, and then creatively solve the problems that your clients are facing, so that like they have actual solutions in front of them and not just a set of KPI reports or dashboards. Second, you will experience a significantly steep, rewarding and learning curve, because you're going to be freed from a lot of these mundane, tedious manual tasks. You'll get a lot more exposure to senior leaders both within ZoomRx and outside ZoomRx, and you will face a lot of complex strategic challenges significantly earlier in your career compared to other consulting firms out there. Your growth will be faster because you are focused on higher value work by creating the maximum impact for your clients. And finally, you will gain your competitive edge. You'll be mastering the AI augmented skill set of the future. The tools and experience you gain here will put you years ahead, making you faster, smarter, and more valuable than your peers in the industry.
Thank you so much, Vijay, for walking us through Galen, and really helpful also for you to give the context of what makes ZoomRx so special in joining our organization and getting involved with helping to be a strategic advisor and to build the tools. So I'm sure you're probably wondering, if I'm interested in consulting, how can I be a part of it? So I'm going to go through really quickly the positions that we have in consulting within the US as well as in India. So in the US, from a delivery focused perspective, right now we have senior consultant and engagement manager as our delivery focused roles. And then we have our senior leadership team, which is senior manager, associate principal, and principal. So delivery focused roles are responsible for managing several projects in the design and execution of those projects, as well as mentoring junior team members. And depending on the role, you'd act as either a point of contact from anything project related, or as a strategic thought partner to the client and kind of leading the project from that perspective. So that's kind of what those delivery focused roles are. And then senior leadership focuses a bit more on building long-term relationships with our clients and growing those relationships, but do oversee the delivery team as well. So very similarly to the US, in India, we have the same structure, with the exception that there are 3 more junior positions in India, and that's going to be associate, senior associate, and consultant. And those extra 3 positions focus more on the data collection side, the analysis, the quality of the data, being able to come up with some summarization of themes and narratives of what the insights are showing. And they do add to the delivery of our project. So they provide that support to put together the deliverables. So essentially those are the positions that we have within the organization. Right now in the United States, we just have one engagement manager role open. So if you are somebody that has already about 5 years of experience in leading primary market research projects, quantitative, qualitative, and you've led a team and a work stream, then definitely happy to have you apply, and I'm happy to help you through the process. In India, we do have positions at different and various levels. If you have any questions about positions, again, please email us to recruitment@zoomrx.com, and we're happy to help you. But now we have got into the portion of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and take a quick look at what questions we have here, and hopefully we can answer a couple of them. So first of all, we have a question. I think this might be for you, Gates. So the question says, hello, so if you are performing primary with a physician and they broadly said efficacy was good, is AI being used live along the ZoomRx employee and physician? I'm trying to understand exactly how it's being used.
Yeah, so it would be in conversation, or if it was the dynamic dialogue text, essentially the HCP would receive a new prompt based on their question, asking them to elaborate on their mention of efficacy. So asynchronously in real time, AI is being used to get deeper insights on that question.
Awesome. Thanks, Gates, for going through that. Let me see. So I have another question here saying, so is AI leading the conversation?
So in the standalone quals that we have, they will still follow a discussion guide that is created, drafted, and finalized in collaboration with our clients, but obviously has more dynamic elements and the ability to adjust based on what the respondent says earlier in the discussion than would a quant survey where you'd be asked certain questions that are programmatically determined.
Thanks, Gates. Here we have another question. Maybe this might be for you, Vijay. Hi, how much data did you upload on your AI models, as there is so much accuracy in evals, and what is the frequency? And yeah, what is the frequency the AI is answering things correctly?
Got it, yeah. I can take that. So there are two facets to this, right? So one is in terms of the actual data collection itself, which I think Gates was extensively talking about. So he presented some evals on the patient scribe. He presented some evals on the dynamic dialogues and stuff. So we have noticed that the accuracy is pretty high in terms of like the higher 90s or mid 90s, I guess, if I'm not wrong, with respect to those platforms. So the idea being that it is not just, as I was explaining during my talk, right? It is not just about like just using a simple like Gemini 3 or like GPT 5.1 or something, and then just letting it run wide with respect to whatever the user is asking. It is going to be grounded on a lot of data. So for example, we have our own industry benchmark data set that has over, like, as I mentioned, like 15 plus years of market research data is being like obviously like blinded, and we make sure that there is no proprietary information that goes through, but we have 15 plus years of market research data that we use to train a lot of our like AI-enabled platforms, like the dynamic dialogues, like the second answers, like the AI moderated qual, and a lot more stuff. So like roughly translates to over like 5 million data points if you're looking for numbers. So that is how much data typically on the promotional effectiveness side, that is how much data that we have used to train our engines in terms of like how exactly to arrive at the most appropriate solution. So, and in addition to that, as I mentioned previously, it is not just LLM running wild. It is going to be leveraging a lot of tools that we've used, that we've built for like very specific data analysis techniques like cross-tabbing and so on. So your LLM is not going to generate cross-tabs out of thin air. It is going to leverage a lot of tools that we've built internally, we've been using in a lot of consulting workflows. And these tools are then like being stitched together, and the LLM layer are like acts as an orchestrator of sorts. So we know that data accuracy is table stakes in terms of project delivery. We cannot and will not have any hallucination in the data that we are getting, let's say, when we are putting together a report, if that answers your question.
Thanks, Vijay. We have another question here. It's a two-part question, and I can take the first part. It says, what skills do consultants need to stay relevant in an AI-enabled environment? And how do consultants ensure transparency in AI models used for decisions? So in terms of what skills do consultants need right now from a hiring perspective and just our employees, we are really looking for curiosity. Curiosity to see what AI can do for us, curiosity to learn what AI, how to build these things out, how to partner with our product owners like Gates and Vijay on how to solve problems. So really that curiosity to see bringing a problem forward and then being able to figure out solutions, that's something that we're looking for off the bat. If you were to join ZoomRx, we're building a lot of different professional learning opportunities for you to learn more about what AI is, what it can do for us, how you can build things out. So I would say as far as skills, curiosity, and then that like yearn for professional development in that sense. As far as how do consultants ensure transparency in AI models used for decisions, Gates or Vijay?
I can take this initial question. Interested to hear Vijay's thoughts as well, but we're not using AI to make decisions when it comes to analyzing primary market research data. We're using it to help us vet hypotheses and understand really what the respondent or respondents are saying. So in terms of transparency, what that looks like in qual, it could be understanding if there's a summary of a certain topic discussion, whether like what the HCPs actually mentioned about that topic and whether or not that summary jives with what you see in the transcripts themselves. It's not as much, we ask an AI to make a decision about what a forecast should be for an emerging pharmaceutical product and trust its answer. It's really asking questions that build into analysis and putting them together. And really the thinking is still being done by humans.
Absolutely, it's aligned there. So the biggest problem is to identify and unearth the relevant data that is going to help you answer a lot of these questions. So what AI does is it helps you like identify which are the questions that need to be looked into, which are the segments of interest that needs to be looked into for answering a very high-level business question. And once that is in place, and it gives you a preliminary version of this is what I interpret out of this, you have all the data like completely traceable, like in the backend, like structured in a very, very consumable form, so that like you can verify whether that insight is correct or if you want to make any changes to that insight. That's the level at which AI is going to. It is not going to, let's say, like create an executive summary slide and send it automatically to a client. That's not what it is intended to do for sure.
Thanks, Vijay and Gates. I have a question here. We're going to take two last questions. One of them is related to, I believe, that efficacy question earlier. It says, and does that prompt to the physician on efficacy happen within an in-office visit or when an AI moderator is interviewing the physician?
So it's part of a survey or conversational experience. So either when they're taking the survey and they're prompted, if it's just via text, they would get that prompt to kind of further elaborate on their initial like open-ended answer, right? And so essentially AI in real time would create a new question to get a better understanding of what they meant about efficacy. So they're dynamic, they're not always the same, which adds some complexity for analysis, but ultimately we want the richest data and we can work through the challenges that presents. If it's in conversation, it would be an AI moderator that would take the HCP through the conversation at their leisure, so they're able to pause if they have an interruption and go back to the interview later if they need. So really unbalance them from only being able to participate in qualitative research when they're able to schedule with a human moderator that obviously has conflicting priorities and different respondents, so they can only take one at a time.
Thanks, Gates. And the last question that I have here is, Also for you, how does Sagan plug into a broader analytics ecosystem here at ZoomRx?
Good question. So I think that's a question for Vijay as well, but ultimately we're understanding what connections should be made, and sometimes throwing more data at a problem is not as helpful, especially the primary market research questions, but understanding how different pieces of research connect within our ecosystem and ultimately can be queried by the patient through Sagan Answers is something that we're deciding on currently. We do analysis with AI, as Vijay mentioned, but in terms of how that comes together and whether or not the way insights are shared will fundamentally change is to be decided. I think just thinking about the way they're visualized currently, we have an HCP patient portal, but most clients still receive their deliverables through PowerPoint. And I've seen even in past roles, the excitement of tech is there, but when it comes to consuming and socializing insights among pharma clients, PowerPoint is still king.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Yeah, that's the primary reason why I talked about the automated reporting engine as part of Gallon as well. Like if tech were the only modality in which we're delivering insights, you would not really need an automated reporting engine at all, because everything will be a dashboard and a chatbot at the end of the day. But that's clearly not the way we are headed. We know that clients require PowerPoint deliverables for most cases, and we are solving that problem.
Thank you both so much for answering those questions. I do see a lot of other questions in here, specifically about skills to join the team and what we look for, and people who have applied. So thank you so much for your interest in ZoomRx. For those specific questions, we will get to them offline. If you have any more questions about recruitment or the process, please email us at recruitment@zoomrx.com. We really, really appreciate you joining us today and learning more about AI in life sciences consulting and what we're doing about that here at ZoomRx and what we're building. So thanks so much for joining. We truly appreciate it, and especially Gates and Vijay, thanks for walking us through everything. Hope everybody has a good day. Thank you.